Major Alex Carter stood at the edge of the ship's hatch, his boots firmly planted on the metal floor, as the distant stars blinked outside the viewing port. He had been briefed on the mission 100 times, yet standing here now on the threshold of a new world, he felt an unusual sense of uncertainty. His orders were clear: travel to the planet Zarkos, a mysterious alien world in a far-off star system, to establish peaceful relations between the human colonies and the alien rulers. But peace was not always as simple as it sounded, especially when dealing with an advanced species whose traditions were completely foreign to him. Carter took a deep breath, adjusting the straps on his gear. The air in the ship's command center was thick with tension. His eyes shifted over to the nearby crew members, all of them busy with final preparations for the landing. As the only human soldier among them, he felt more like an outsider than ever. His mission was diplomatic, but his training as a soldier made him acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. He wasn't here to negotiate weapons or engage in battle, but he knew better than anyone that diplomacy could break down in an instant. The Zarkos were a species unlike any Carter had encountered before. They were an ancient and highly intelligent race, their civilization rich with history, yet shrouded in mystery. Though they had advanced technology and vast knowledge, they had remained largely isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Their homeworld was a beautiful, vibrant planet. Lush forests with towering trees and crystal-clear lakes stretched as far as the eye could see. But beneath that serene surface was a planet torn by internal strife, an unstable political landscape that had made it difficult for them to interact with the outside world. This was why the human colonies had sent Carter to Zarkos. The leaders of Earth believed that by establishing strong ties with the Zarkos, they could secure a much-needed ally in a galaxy full of unpredictable threats. Carter's job was to ease tensions, listen to the leaders, and ensure that the humans were seen as friends, not foes. What he hadn't expected was the request that came with it. The court of Zarkos had issued a strange, nearly impossible demand, a ritual that would require a human to help their species evolve, to aid in unlocking their potential. It was not just a matter of diplomacy, it had become something much more personal. The ship's comm system crackled, breaking through his thoughts.
"Major Carter, we're entering the atmosphere," the voice of Lieutenant Maria Franco said over the intercom.
Her tone was calm, but Carter knew that this was far from a routine mission. "Understood," Carter replied, his voice steady despite the slight tightness in his chest. He turned toward the large, transparent viewport and watched as the ship descended into the atmosphere of Zarkos. Below, he could see the sprawling, vibrant landscapes of the alien planet, alive with colors and life forms that were entirely new to him. There was something undeniably awe-inspiring about it. Yet, beneath that beauty, he knew there was a deeper tension. The ship's landing gear touched the ground with a soft thud, and the hatch slowly opened to reveal a group of Zarkos awaiting their arrival. Carter stepped out first, the air of the planet cool against his skin, his senses immediately overwhelmed by the foreign scent of alien flora and the sound of the wind rustling through towering trees. The Zarkos who greeted him were tall, their skin a shade of silver that shimmered under the planet's sun. Their eyes were large, dark, and piercing, reflecting a centuries-old wisdom. The way they carried themselves suggested both grace and strength, traits that Carter had heard about, but had never truly understood until now. Their leader, a woman adorned in flowing robes, approached him. She had an air of authority, but it was tempered by a strange, almost regal elegance. "I am Empress Velara," she announced, her voice melodic yet firm. She looked at Carter, her gaze lingering on him for a moment before she continued. "Welcome to Zarkos, Major Carter. We are honored by your presence." Carter nodded in response, trying his best to mask the unease he felt. "The honor is mine, Empress Velara," he said, his tone respectful but guarded. "I've been sent to represent the interests of Earth. I hope we can work together to establish a lasting partnership." Empress Velara's lips curled into a smile, but it was not a warm smile. "You misunderstand, Major Carter," she said, her voice softening.
The Zarkos do not need your partnership. What we need is something much more profound.
The words hung in the air, and Carter's mind raced, trying to understand what she meant. His military training had prepared him for many things, but not for this. Whatever it was. You see, she continued, we have reached an impasse in our evolution. Our species has stagnated for centuries. We need something more. Something different. Her gaze turned steely, and she gestured toward a group of younger Zarkos females who stood nearby. It is here that you come in, Major. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. He had been expecting a formal greeting, perhaps a simple exchange of pleasantries, but now it was clear that the Zarkos had something else in mind, something that went beyond diplomacy and peace.
You are to take part in a ritual, Empress Velara said, her voice unwavering.
A ritual that will help unlock the potential of our next generation. You are the key to our future.
Carter opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He had no idea what kind of ritual this could be. His mind raced, trying to understand the situation. The implications of what she was saying were not lost on him. The humans had known little about the Zarkos other than their technological prowess and their history of isolation. The idea of a ritual, especially one that involved him, was unsettling. What kind of ritual could this be? And why him? Empress Velarar seemed to read his confusion. Do not worry, Major, she said, her voice calm but insistent.
This is a necessary step for our survival. Our people are
incomplete. Only through this ritual can we truly evolve. The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy blanket. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, a pressure that made it harder to breathe. He had no idea what kind of situation he had just stepped into, but it was clear now that his mission had changed. He wasn't just here for diplomacy anymore. He was here to be a part of something that could change the fate of an entire species, whether he wanted it or not. The days following Major Carter's arrival on Zarkos were unlike any he had ever experienced. He had been briefed on many diplomatic missions before, but none had prepared him for the strange and unsettling request that the Empress had placed before him. Carter spent the first few nights in a lavish yet unfamiliar palace, surrounded by towering, glimmering structures built from some form of polished alien material. The walls, though beautiful, made him feel small, trapped in a world that was not his own. In the first few hours after meeting Empress Velara, Carter had tried to piece together what was really happening. He had been told his presence was needed to help the Zarkos evolve. But what did that mean? The idea of a ritual, especially one that involved him, was something he couldn't fully comprehend. He had been part of countless military operations, but none had ever come close to this. He sat in his quarters, looking out at the lush landscape of Zarkos from the large, transparent window. The view was breathtaking. Vast forests stretched as far as the eye could see, and crystal-clear lakes sparkled under the golden sunlight. The planet had a beauty to it that felt almost unreal, and yet, despite the peaceful exterior, something darker lingered beneath the surface. The more Carter thought about the ritual, the more questions flooded his mind. What was it that the Empress had meant? Was it truly something that would help the Zarkos evolve? Or was there a hidden agenda at play? It didn't make sense. He had trained for diplomacy, but nothing in his training had ever prepared him for something like this. The following morning, he was summoned to a private chamber in the heart of the palace. As he entered, he saw the Empress once more, her silver skin glistening in the soft light. She was sitting on an elevated throne, her expression serene but commanding. Around her stood several Zarkos females, young and seemingly untouched by time, their eyes filled with curiosity as they watched Carter approach. The Empress rose from her throne, her long, flowing robes moving like liquid silver. "Major Carter," she said, her voice as smooth as the calmest waters. "It is time that you understand the full scope of what we ask of you. The ritual is not simply a matter of physicality. It is a process that will bind our species to its next phase of evolution. Carter felt his chest tighten, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had heard enough to understand that this wasn't going to be an easy choice. The Empress's eyes, though calm, seemed to pierce through him, making him feel as if she knew all his doubts before he even voiced them. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. "What exactly is this ritual, Empress?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "The Zarkos have evolved through countless generations," she began, her voice thoughtful.
But we have reached a plateau. We have no more answers. No new paths forward.
Our species has stagnated. We need to unlock a new potential, one that will allow us to grow and change beyond our current limits. Carter listened intently, though his mind was racing. The idea of a species stagnating was not a new one. Humans had faced their own struggles with growth and advancement. But what did the Empress mean by unlocking potential? Was it as simple as the physical process she had suggested, or was there something more? "Our females," Empress Velara continued, "have reached adulthood, but they are not fully developed. They cannot lead us, cannot guide us through this new age. We require a catalyst, a human catalyst, one who can help guide them to their true potential." Carter's heart skipped a beat. "You want me to… what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Empress's gaze softened, but her words were firm.
The ritual will require physical bonding.
"Through you, they will receive the energy needed to evolve. It is a natural process for us. You will help them connect with their deepest potential, spiritually, emotionally, and biologically. You will help them reach the next stage of their evolution." Carter stood motionless, unsure of how to respond. He had never been in a situation like this before, where his own body and life were the key to a species' survival. The concept felt alien, and yet the gravity of the situation was undeniable. If the Zarkos truly needed his help, what choice did he have?
"And if I refuse?"
Carter asked, his voice strained, his mind spinning. The Empress did not flinch.
"Refusal is not an option," she said calmly. "You are the key."
"The ritual cannot succeed without your participation. If you do not help us, we will be doomed to stagnate, and our species will fade into history." Carter's mind raced. He knew the Zarkos were not an enemy. They had never been, in fact. They were a proud and intelligent species, capable of great things. But this was a different kind of responsibility. He was not sure what his next step should be, but he knew he had to make a decision soon. The fate of an entire species rested on his shoulders. The next few days passed in a blur. Carter was subjected to more detailed explanations of the ritual, and he learned more about the Zarkos than he had ever anticipated. The females, whom the Empress had referred to as the next generation, were special in their own right. They were not simply the next group of individuals to be born. They were the future of the Zarkos society. These young females were not like humans, nor were they like any other species in the galaxy. Their biology was unique, and their evolution had been shaped by thousands of years of careful growth. Yet, the fact that they needed something more to evolve fully troubled Carter. They were stuck in a cycle, unable to move forward without external help. The idea of him acting as that external help made him uneasy, but he still didn't understand the full scope of the ritual. On the third day, he met one of the females directly. Her name was Lyra, and she was young by Zarkos standards, though her presence was full of wisdom. She had a calm, almost ethereal aura around her. When they spoke, her voice was soft, but Carter could sense her inner strength. "You don't have to do this," Lyra said, looking into his eyes.
"You could still leave. You don't have to be part of this."
Carter's heart tightened. "Why would you say that?" "Because I know what it's like to be part of something bigger than yourself," she replied. "I can see the burden you carry. But you don't have to carry it alone.
Carter felt a connection to her words, but the decision still loomed over him. He knew he wasn't the first to be chosen for such a task. He also knew that the Zarkos had come to the humans in their hour of need, asking for assistance. This was their moment of change, their time to evolve. And it seemed that Carter was the only one who could help them. As the days continued, Carter wrestled with his thoughts. His role in the ritual was becoming clearer, but his doubts persisted. Could he truly be the catalyst for such an extraordinary transformation? Was he willing to sacrifice his own sense of control to help them? And if he did agree, what would that mean for him and for the Zarkos? He stood by the window of his chamber one final time, looking out at the alien sky. Zarkos was a beautiful world. But could it ever be truly saved? Could he really be the one to help it evolve? Major Alex Carter had never felt so torn. The days that followed his first conversation with Empress Velara were filled with uncertainty. The weight of the ritual pressed heavily on his shoulders, and the more he learned about it, the more his confusion grew. The Zarkos were a species in need, and yet something about their situation felt off. The more Carter considered their request, the more questions arose. Was this really about evolution, or was there something more? Was it possible that the Empress was simply using him and the humans to secure her own power, and by doing so, risking the very survival of her people? Carter spent hours walking the palace halls, trying to clear his mind. The beauty of Zarkos' landscapes, once awe-inspiring, now felt distant, almost unreachable. The alien structures that had once filled him with wonder now seemed like cold, imposing walls. The planet's charm could no longer mask the anxiety he felt, nor the growing doubts that clouded his thoughts. It was on one of these walks that Carter met someone unexpected. Lyra, the young Zarkos female who had spoken to him before, appeared at his side without warning. Her movements were graceful, almost silent, as she approached him.
Major Carter,
she said softly, her voice carrying the same calm strength he had sensed before. I know you're struggling with this, but I want you to know that not all of us are convinced this ritual is the right way. Carter looked at her in surprise. You don't think it's the right path either? She shook her head slowly. We've always believed that evolution should be something we achieve on our own. But there are those of us who fear that this ritual will only make us dependent on others, on humans. We're being pushed into something we're not ready for. Carter felt a flicker of hope. Here, at last, was someone who seemed to understand his growing concerns. For the first time since arriving on Zarkos, he wasn't alone in his doubts. What do you think we should do? He asked quietly. Lyra looked away, her expression distant.
I'm not sure, but I think you have a choice. You don't have to be part of this.
If you refuse, there are those of us who will support you. We believe that there must be another way.
Carter's heart raced at her words. A part of him had already known that refusing the ritual might be an option, but hearing it aloud was different.
It felt like a doorway had opened, a chance for him to walk away from this tangled web of expectations and unknowns. But another part of him, the soldier, the one who had always followed orders, knew that walking away wasn't so simple. I can't just walk away, Carter said, shaking his head. I'm here to help. The Zarkos need me.
You can walk away, Lyra replied, her voice firm. We all have choices, Major.
Even you. Carter turned away from her, walking a few steps down the corridor, his boots echoing in the silence. His mind was racing. Lyra's words, though calming, only made him more uncertain. If he left, what would happen to the Zarkos? What would happen to their future? But there was a part of him, deep inside, that questioned the Empress's motives. Was this really about helping the Zarkos evolve, or was it about something more sinister? He had always believed that humanity was capable of great acts of compassion and bravery. But was this ritual a step too far? Would he be sacrificing more than just his own safety by agreeing to it? In the coming days, Carter found himself increasingly drawn into a world of political intrigue. The Zarkos court was a place of whispered conversations and tense alliances, and Carter had begun to suspect that things weren't as they seemed. Though the Empress claimed to be acting in the best interest of her people, Carter started to notice signs that suggested otherwise. It was during one of his private meetings with the Empress that the truth began to reveal itself. They sat across from each other in a lavishly decorated room, the walls lined with shimmering stones that seemed to glow with an unnatural light. "The ritual is necessary, Major," Valara said, her voice smooth as ever, though Carter could detect the hint of impatience beneath her calm exterior.
You are the key to unlocking the potential of our people. If you help us, we will reach heights we've never known before.
Carter remained silent, weighing her words. He had heard this argument before, but the more he heard it, the more it seemed hollow. "And if I don't help?" he asked, his voice calm but steady. The Empress paused for a moment, her eyes narrowing. "If you do not help, the Zarkos will stagnate. We will never achieve the next stage of our evolution. We will fade into irrelevance." Carter could feel the tension in the room, thick and suffocating. "But at what cost, Empress?" he asked. "You speak of evolution, but it sounds like you're asking me to give up something far greater. My people, our people, are not pawns in your game. I'm not just here to play a part in some ritual." For a brief moment, Valara's mask of composure slipped. Her eyes flashed with something that resembled anger, though it quickly faded. "You do not understand, Major. This is not a game. This is survival." "But you haven't explained why," Carter replied, his voice growing more forceful. "Why does this ritual require me? Why not someone else? You claim to be on the brink of something great, but I don't see it. I see a planet that's at war with itself, using an outsider as a tool to fix its own problems." The Empress stood, her movements sharp and purposeful. "You do not see the bigger picture, Major. You cannot. This is not about a single individual. This is about the future of our entire species. You are a part of that future, whether you like it or not." Carter's chest tightened. He had heard enough. His mind was made up, and the decision weighed heavily on him. He could not allow himself to become a tool for the Empress's plans, no matter how grand they appeared. There was something off about this whole situation, and he wasn't willing to let the Zarkos, or humanity, be used as pawns in a game that he didn't fully understand. The next few days were filled with tension. Carter spent most of his time in isolation, contemplating the choice that lay before him. The Zarkos needed a solution, but was he the right one to provide it? He couldn't help but think of Lyra's words, the possibility that there was another way, that he didn't have to be part of this ritual. But the question remained, what would happen if he walked away? Would the Zarkos continue on their path to stagnation? Would their world crumble under the weight of their own limitations? Finally, Carter made up his mind. He knew what he had to do. It wasn't about saving Zarkos alone. It was about finding a way for them to save themselves, to evolve without relying on the intervention of others. It was time to take a stand, not as a soldier, but as a person who believed that evolution, real evolution, came from within. The Zarkos might not understand his decision. Empress Valara might never forgive him. But Carter knew that he couldn't be a part of something that didn't sit right with him, no matter the cost. In the days that followed, the tension between him and the Empress reached its peak. Carter refused to participate in the ritual, and instead, he called for a meeting with the Zarkos court, ready to present an alternative solution, one that did not involve him. He had made his choice. The days leading up to the inevitable confrontation were some of the longest Carter had ever experienced. His decision had been made. He would not participate in the ritual, and he would not let the Zarkos continue on a path that threatened to trap them in dependence. The weight of his choice sat heavily on his shoulders, but there was a strange sense of clarity now. He knew what he had to do, and it wasn't about fighting for his own survival anymore. It was about ensuring the Zarkos had a chance to find their own way, free of external interference. In the days after he refused to partake in the ritual, Carter found himself isolated in his quarters, surrounded by the heavy silence of a planet whose future hung in the balance. The Zarkos court was still divided, but one thing had become clear. Empress Velara would not back down. She saw his refusal as an insult, an act of rebellion that could not be tolerated. But Carter didn't care. He had seen too much, understood too much, to turn back now. The palace seemed colder now, its vast, ornate halls filled with shadows. Carter's mind raced as he prepared for what he knew was coming. The Empress would not simply let him walk away. There were whispers, rumors that the court would use him as an example, make it clear that no one human or Zarkos could challenge their authority. He had expected that much. But he had also known that if he didn't stand up, the Zarkos would be stuck in their endless cycle of stagnation, relying on others to define their future. He stood in front of the large window in his quarters, looking out at the breathtaking landscape of Zarkos. The trees, tall and green, swayed gently in the wind, while the lake sparkled under the light of two suns. It was a peaceful sight, one that didn't fit the tension brewing within the palace walls. But Carter knew that the peace of Zarkos was fragile, and the Empress's desire to control her people would destroy it if left unchecked. There was a knock at the door. Carter turned, his thoughts interrupted. He didn't need to be told who it was. "Come in," he said, his voice steady. Lyra entered, her silver skin gleaming softly in the light, her expression serious. Her eyes, once full of hope and curiosity, now looked weary, as if the weight of the entire planet rested on her shoulders. She stepped forward, her posture straight but careful, as if unsure how to approach him. "You're still going through with this, aren't you?" she asked, her voice low but filled with concern. Carter nodded. "I don't have much of a choice now. The Empress won't let me walk away quietly." She shook her head, a look of sadness crossing her features. "I knew you would stand your ground, Major, but I hoped you wouldn't have to take it this far." "I don't see another option," Carter replied. "The Zarkos can't keep depending on external forces. They need to find their own way, not rely on rituals or outsiders to define their future." Lyra stepped closer, her voice softening. "I agree. But there are others here, within the court, who don't see it that way. Valara's followers believe that this ritual is the only path forward. They see you as a threat, someone who's standing in the way of their future." "I know," Carter said, his voice heavy, "but I can't let that stop me. If I don't stand up now, nothing will ever change. The Zarkos will always rely on others to fix their problems." "That's not true evolution." She paused for a moment, looking down at the floor as if weighing her words. "You're right, but the truth is, Major, the Empress won't just let you walk away. She'll do everything in her power to make sure this ritual goes forward." "I've prepared for that," Carter said, turning away from her and looking out the window again. "I have to stop this now, before it's too late." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of comfort that was oddly human. "Then I'll be by your side, Major. You're not alone in this. There are others who feel the same way. We don't want to see our people trapped in the past." Carter turned to face her, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Lyra. Your support means more than you know." The tension between the Zarkos court and Carter continued to rise, and soon the Empress made her move. It was clear that her patience had worn thin. She called for a meeting in the central hall of the palace, where all the high-ranking members of the Zarkos court would gather to discuss Carter's refusal to participate in the ritual. Carter knew this meeting was not going to be a simple diplomatic exchange. It was a test, one that would determine whether he would be allowed to leave Zarkos peacefully, or whether the court would take drastic measures to ensure the ritual's success. The hall was vast, with towering columns stretching upward, their smooth surfaces shimmering with the light from the twin suns outside. The air was thick with tension as Carter entered, his uniform crisp and neat, his posture straight and unyielding. The Zarkos court members were already seated, their eyes trained on him, as he walked toward the center of the room. Empress Velara stood at the far end of the room, her eyes cold and calculating. She raised a hand, signaling for silence. "Major Carter," she began, her voice calm but laced with an undeniable edge. "You have refused to participate in the ritual. You have openly defied the will of the court."
Explain yourself. Carter took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving the Empress.
"I refuse because I believe that the Zarkos deserve to evolve on their own terms, not through a ritual that relies on outsiders. I've seen what your court has planned, and I can't be part of it."
I won't be used as a tool to secure your power.
The room was silent for a moment. The Empress's expression didn't change, but the murmurs from the court members grew louder, as if they were uncertain how to react. "You speak of power," Velara said, her voice steady but tinged with an unmistakable anger.
"You think you know what is best for us, Major? You think you can come here and tell us what we need?"
"But you are a guest in our world, and you have no right to dictate our future."
"I'm not here to dictate," Carter replied.
"I'm here to help, but not at the cost of losing everything that makes you Zarkos. You can't evolve by borrowing someone else's strength. You have to do it yourself." A murmur rippled through the court, but Velara held up her hand, silencing them.
"You are mistaken, Major."
"Without this ritual, the Zarkos will wither. Our species will die out."
"I don't believe that," Carter said firmly. "Your species is strong."
"You have the power to grow, but not by relying on rituals or outsiders. You need to find your own path." The Empress's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening. "You leave me no choice, Major. If you will not comply willingly, we will make you comply." The room erupted in chaos as guards began to move toward Carter, but before they could reach him, Lyra stepped forward, standing between him and the Empress. "You cannot force evolution, Empress," she said, her voice steady but resolute. "We must choose our own way. It is time for the Zarkos to step into the future without relying on others." Velara's gaze flickered to Lyra, then back to Carter. "So be it," she said, her voice cold.
You have chosen your fate, Major Carter, and so we have chosen ours. But Carter was ready.
He had prepared for this moment, and with Lyra's support, he was no longer just a pawn in a game. He was a man with a choice to fight for the future of an entire species, and to stand against the very forces that sought to control them. As the tension reached its breaking point, Carter took a deep breath, prepared to face whatever came next. He had made his stand, and no matter what happened, he would not back down.